Hello, everyone, and welcome to Into the Black Archive, where for the first time in over a year, we are reacting to a new Doctor Who episode. And for the first time in nearly 14 years, we are reacting to a Russel T Davies written, David Tennant and Catherine Tate starring Doctor Who episode. I am very emotional, and I say this. I think it's a lot of nostalgia, but I am really emotional about this. It just feels like my show is back, and I'm not saying it was perfect, but my show is back, and I feel happy again. Owen,
Yeah, because let's not beat around for bush. There are some issues.
I will agree with you. There are.
It is basically Deus Ex Machina for the episode.
Yes, I will not overlook this. I am completely willing to look straight in the face the fact that half of this episode is resolved through complete bullshit. But it was nice, and it felt nice.
This is a Russel T Davies story, but it's not quite a Russel T Davies story, though.
No, the story credit is to two other writers.
So it goes to Matt Mills and John Wager, because this is actually based off a 1980s comic starring the Fourth Doctor, and they've kind of adapted it, and Russel T Davies has brought it to the screen.
I mean, isn't that just the most Doctor Who thing, where it's, the big 60th anniversary, how are we going to sum all of it up? We'll just adapt a comic from the 80s.
I think that is one of the complaints I've seen, though, is that it doesn't feel very like how the 50th felt, boom, big anniversary special.
Yeah.
This did kind of just feel like just the start of a series.
Yeah, this felt like episode 1 of a series. I think you're right. I'm not sure whether it really captures the anniversary side of things. I think it's just like, it's this perfect treat for a certain demographic of the Doctor Who audience, of which I am part, to be honest. So I'm going to speak fondly on it because it's kind of made for me. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it felt like an anniversary special. Like, there were sort of references here and there, but maybe it's going to be those next 2 episodes that do the anniversary lifting.
Yeah, I've got a feeling it might be the final.
Maybe. I don't know. I think just because of the date, I suppose, we were expecting a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
But this was definitely we are resolving the Donna Noble situation episode.
Through plot contrivances all over the shot. But
it's a shot, not a shot.
Shall we first of all, though, start off, because the first time we've seen it, for new title sequence. How dynamic is that? That's just, I loved the title sequence.
I mean, this is part of a wider point I'll get onto probably many times as we talk about this. Good Lord, was there some budget in that? Like, it looks like money. You know what I mean? Like, it looks like they've spent money. It looks brilliant. I think it's so dynamic. It isn't that one shot anymore. I mean, we've become so used to, the one shot perspective. That's been sort of the whole thing for Doctor Who since, the start. So to have it moving around sort of in this great big time cloud, I guess we're going to call it, I think it looks brilliant. The moment I saw it, I was like, yeah, this feels like what they've always wanted to have.
I mean, on the topic of budget, it was said not long after the airing.
Yeah, I've seen this quote.
Which the effects budget for one episode is equal to the entirety of a series of a late 2000s special. There is money here now.
When I saw that quote, it was just before I started watching. So it kind of framed what I was thinking about in terms of, okay, well, this budget's going to look massive, surely. Because it's not like, I know Doctor Who's cheap, like, relatively to other shows, or at least it was.
Yeah.
But, like, that really puts it into perspective, like, how much money there is now. It's just a different world.
Yeah, it's definitely now, it fits in with what it's going to be surrounded by in, as you say, Disney Plus. It kind of matches that quality now. Whereas if you look back at sort of like the late 2000s, the old Russel T Davies era, for instance, there was big discrepancies even going into Moffat's era.
Oh, absolutely there was. But, I mean, we've always overlooked them and we've kind of said, oh, that's part of the charm of the show. And I still think it is part of the charm of the show. And I don't know, sometimes I was watching it weirdly and I was thinking to myself, how would they have done this with the old budget? And wondering whether they would have been more creative with how they did it.
I mean, Russel T Davies in Doctor Who Unleashed outright says he does. Because he's sort of sat there going, like, this is a really good comic book. I remember reading when it first came out. Why didn't I do it at first? Probably because of budget. Is pretty much what he ends up saying.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I still haven't seen the Unleashed episode, mainly because I'm really high off of this thing having happened. Finishing up the title sequence talk looks brilliant. I love the new theme, and I loved it just hearing it with audio, but I think with the title sequence, it works just as well. Just a great way to be like, hello, we're back. We missed you. Come on.
And talking about music, so when we start off with the Doctor landing, and he's walking off, sort of like bouncing along. I know I was one of people questioning Marigold's return, but I love that sort of cheery, bouncy music as he's just coming out of the TARDIS, just having a nosy around, and it just kind of continues on with the music trend, I think.
Full spoilers for this episode. If you didn't think they were going to be, it's full spoilers. So he arrives in Camden and everything's all good. And we meet Donna inside 30 seconds and then the whole thing's broken and then we're just on the ride.
So how do you feel about how they introduced Donna?
I think it was exactly right. I just think it was perfect to do it in a way that was slightly unexpected. And the main thing with introducing Donna is to be honest, they could have done it in any way. The important thing is that Catherine Tate is just perfect in that role and was immediately back. It was like no time had passed.
And we have a little bit of bouncing around, don't we? Of, no, you can't see me, of this kind of stuff, and they run off.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that all gets broken up by, oh, hello, spaceship over London, very quickly. I do like how quickly we just get into the episode. Like, there's no waiting around. It's, oh, we're in Camden, lovely, nice, boom.
I also love how we continue the trend of Donna just missing everything.
Yeah, I mean, there was that obviously that joke, the whole, oh, I always miss everything with such a klutz. But also, like, I never thought we'd hear Neris mentioned ever again.
I do actually have her written down in my notes. Because this is a very open question of this story, all right? Is Neris fine? I mean, like, there's a lot of toing and froing. Like, Neris started fine, then she had an accident, so she wasn't fine. Then she used to be fine, but is she fine now?
Well,
James.
Is Neris fine? I'm going to say to the prevailing question of the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, Neris, is she fine? I'm gonna say more fine. It's nice to have all of the jokes about that. It's great because obviously we don't meet some of the characters that were in the previous, Russell series. Wilfred Mott in particular being the notable one. God rest the soul of Bernard Cribbins. Yeah. But everyone sort of gets a mention, and in a way, and this is, I just think, the skill of Russell as a writer. It feels like all of those, like the questions that were right at the back of your head about that part of Doctor Who, the ones you'd left behind ages ago, were kind of brought up again. You went, oh yeah, and at the same time they were sort of answering that question of what the next step was. It doesn't do much for the episode, but it feels like it wraps up a lot of the things that were left from what Davies did before. So the Doctor arrives where the spaceship has crashed. Unit, who are back, and also right at the end of the episode have the Avengers Tower in the middle of London.
Can we also just discuss how bad they are throughout this entire episode?
Oh, Unit are horrendous in this episode. Apart from Ruth Madley's character.
Well, no, it's the entire Unit body here, I think. They secure the perimeter, the Doctor just walks right in, no one actually spots him.
Yep.
And then they get taken over, which Bingham was there watching them get possessed, but did nothing.
This is Shirley Ann Bingham, Ruth Madley's character in the wheelchair, yes?
Yeah. She did nothing. She sees them walking out. She doesn't follow them, doesn't get anyone to follow them. Just they wait until Major Singh comes back from guarding the escape pod before then realising, oh wait, we might actually want to stop these possessed guys.
it. I think it's best to say that the actions of UNIT today will probably require some form of governmental inquiry as to how it went wrong. But to be fair, Russell T Davies has never depicted soldiers as being that intelligent. Like, if you look back to the old episodes of Unit and Russell, I think of the Sontaran one in particular, Unit do next to nothing right in that episode either. And that's kind of a point of the episode, is they're being militant, and that's the problem. And you have to have a different way of looking at it, which the Doctor has.
But I expect better from the 56th scientific advisor.
Yeah. Doctor finds out about the ship, has a chat with Shirley and Bingham. Meanwhile, as that's going on, we get the chance to meet Donna's daughter, who is called Rose. And I loved Yasmin Finney in this episode. She doesn't get maybe as much to do as we perhaps thought she might, but I think with what she has, she does an awful lot well.
I like with her character how the character herself we don't really stick on the trans side of the discussion with her character. We focus largely on how it affects the family dynamic. Like, we've got Sylvia constantly going like, am I right to say she's gorgeous? Is that sexist? Should I be saying that? And it feels like a very natural conversation for like your nan to have, is not sort of like this transphobia to be transphobic, but just have almost ignorance, just not quite knowing what to do. That just seemed very realistic.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. It brings me on to a point I wanted to bring up, which is that, but one thing he's always been really good at, and I think that's what separates his episodes from other Doctor Who episodes, is that the actual character side of the episode's always good.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like, oh, big alien, big alien, big alien, and the drama, and we're solving that. One of the big problems I had with Flux, this 2 years ago, the last series we had, unbelievably, is that there was all sorts of big stuff going on, and we were going between big event to big event to big event, but it never felt like there was a natural scene where any character development could really take place. In this special, within 10 minutes, we've reintroduced ourselves to Donna. We've reintroduced ourselves to Tennant. Yes, I know he's a different Doctor, but still, it kind of is the same. And also, we've met an entirely new character. We understand her dilemma. And I know so much about that character so quickly. And that, to me, is what good writing is about. It's how quickly can you make me care about these people? And this episode does it so well.
But this has just reminded me, though, about a scene where it doesn't do this, and it does take me out of it quite a lot. It's the scene between Doctor and Bingham, where the Doctor is saying, like, oh, I knew this person, but now we don't want her to see my face because she might die, and of that kind of stuff. It just felt like really unnecessary exposition, which I feel like we could have stepped by. But then we also had that really pointless bit of exposition at the beginning with that bit of dodgy green screening.
Yeah, this does bring me on to problems.
It's that one bit of dialogue which I just thought, why is this here?
With the green screen intro, obviously, if you've watched it, you know that before even the title sequence takes place, we sort of have a previously on where we've superimposed David Tennant sort of onto an image of space, and then Donna's chatting from the living room, and they're both sort of talking about what happened before and establishing the context of what happened in Journey's End and why Donna doesn't remember the Doctor and everything like that. And then that scene we're talking about, the one with Shirley Ann Bingham, is made completely redundant by the green screen intro. And to be fair, it feels really off. That scene doesn't work.
It just doesn't. Nothing in that scene feels natural. Like, she just appears next to the Doctor, which doesn't really make much sense. And then the dialogue between them just feels so forced and manufactured. There's no shock of, oh, it's the Doctor. it just feels like that time could have been used so much better. But either we get rid of that bizarre intro thing, which also wasn't particularly needed, or we remove this conversation here and add something else to it, like add some more character building towards Bingham.
It's either one or the other, isn't it? I think both of those things do the exact same job. I think I personally would have preferred them not doing the green screen intro and just using the scene with Shirley. But even then, I think that's just sort of go, oh, hello, person I've never met. I'm just going to tell you about this thing that happened to me like 4 lives ago, bear in mind.
Yeah. Like I feel like if it was Stuart or someone like that, it would make more sense.
Yeah, if Stuart was there,
because
that'd be different.
They've got that relationship there. But it just feels like if there's a new guy at work and you bump into him and start telling him your life story.
Yeah, it's kind of oversharing.
It just doesn't feel natural.
It's that lack of natural feeling to that conversation. And there's a few instances of that in this episode where I kind of think that's a bit contrived, or we're sort of forcing this scene to happen in order for other things to happen. I think that's one of the biggest issues in the story, is that a lot of stuff is easily explained away, or kind of the easy route is taken to it in order to just sort of deal with problems quite quickly.
But also, I put it to you as well, particularly with the ending. We'll get to the ending later.
Yeah, of course.
But particularly with the ending, there seems to be needless explanations to things which don't need explanations, where I feel like the story would have been better if we kind of just left half of it out in some respects.
That's I don't know. That's an interesting. I haven't actually thought of it that way. I mean, do you know? I'll ask you that question when we get to the ending.
So we're sort of meeting for Meep at the moment.
Yeah, we're getting to the Meep, I think. So anyway, there's an escape pod that's crashed near
Meep.
the house. Rose finds Beep the Meep. Now, listeners to this podcast who
Meep,
aren't...
Meep.
Shut up. People listening to this podcast that aren't massive Doctor Who fans will probably have no idea what a Beep the Meep is. And I definitely didn't up until we were building up to this
All praise
episode.
for Meep.
Owen, what is a Beep the Meep? As we have technically, this is not a new character that they've just created.
So it depends here. Do you want the actual answer or do you want the manufactured answer?
Do you want to give both? It's that kind of podcast.
So when we first get introduced for Meep, we are told which they're essentially livestock. They are kept for their furs so that people around the galaxy can enjoy their luscious fur. But someone in the galaxy says no more fur. So for people who run the Meep farms, I guess, kind of just cull them off. So this Meep's gone on to run. So that is kind of the initial story for Meep tells everyone. After we have, I think, my favourite scene in this entire episode of just Sylvia basically attempting to blatantly... Where we have Sylvia basically attempting to blatantly gaslight everyone at the same time, and she is so bad at it, and it's amazing. So basically having this big fight, and then Lance walks in and just goes, "Hi."
Wait a minute, did you call him good. Lance? That's an old
Lance, is it?
That's an old love interest.
That's the evil one. That's the evil love interest.
That is the one who tried to use her body as a vessel for the Empress of the Rachnos. We must remember Lance's role. This is Sean, Owen.
Yes, Sean Temple. But he basically just walks in and goes, "That smells like that." That's my favourite scene. I think it's just comedically perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this episode is really good comedically. It has that fun in it that I think we've lacked in a lot of recent series. Like, it's not afraid to be funny, and sometimes it's kind of funny in a childish sort of way. But I don't mind that, because we really do have to remember Doctor Who is a family show that can be watched by kids, and should be able to be watched by kids. And that's the thing that I think we kind of, when it went to Moffat, and this isn't a criticism of Moffat at all, it leaned a little bit
Yeah.
away from being a kids show to being more of a teen show.
It got too complex. It
Yeah, it
got
got
too
very
complex for
complex.
kids to follow. It got too complex for me to follow.
I mean, some of the series arcs were just like it was sort of Moffat every season was trying to think, how can I make an arc that is even more complex and like labyrinthine than the last one that I made? Whereas that's not the goal for kids. They
Yeah.
just, at the end of the day, you want a fun episode that tells a good story with characters you care about. And sometimes, have a cute alien in there who says things like meep meep. That's absolutely fine.
Meep.
And you can tell those jokes. There's no issue with that. I think they get the comedy really bang on. And the tone of the episode, I think, throughout is really right. Yeah, so by this point, Donna's obviously found the meep in Rose's little shed, which is hilarious.
Can I say this is the start of my major problem with this entire episode?
Go on.
This is from this point on, it's a problem for me. So if we think back to what's the episode when the master gets off his takes over everyone's faces?
The End of Time Part 2. Well, 1,
End of
actually.
Time.
Yeah, it's the End of Time.
When we go to the End of Time, purely the sight of all of this batshit stuff going on reminds Donna of the Doctor, right?
Yes.
So why hasn't she remembered here?
That, Owen, is called plot contrivance. Although actually, I think I have one solution. It's not really explained in the story, so I'm not going to give them it. But theoretically, there is an argument that at the time the End of Time happens, it's only been about a year since Donna had the incident where she lost her mind and couldn't remember the Doctor. And obviously now it's 15 years canonically. So perhaps you could argue, oh, well, it's further down and it's less fresh, so it would be harder to bring back up. Obviously, this is me trying to justify this. But I think I sort of give them a pass because you have to have Don in the story somehow. And I suppose as long as there is a line in it, which is sort of like, oh, she can see me as long as she doesn't remember me. That's the important thing. And to be fair, as we go, she sort of does.
But she remembers him without even thinking of the Doctor. And it's a developing problem throughout this story I have. it's just like, right. Like at this point, we're putting off the solving of this problem, so we have less time to solve it. And then it just turns out to be a bit shit.
I do see that issue with this episode. I definitely see the perspective where it's a problem. I think largely as an emotional story, I think it works. But I will admit that the logic used to make that emotional story the way it is isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of contrivance. And by the time we get to the end, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic that we're in this point and like the Doctor's there and Donna's there and everything, and it's all lovely.
Yeah.
And we kind of have this happy point where we've got to. But did we actually earn that in the right way? I think that's the question as to whether it feels like earned or whether it's hollow. I mean, what do you think of like where we are with this? Where we get to at the end, is that like an earned thing or is that a hollow thing? I sense you're going to say the latter.
Are you wanting me to talk about the ending?
Yeah, we keep on wanting to mention the ending. We obviously want to talk about the bloody ending.
Should we just talk about the ending?
Yeah, off we go.
Because because we keep coming back to it. Right. So first of all, let me set the scene. The ending section, let's say, basically begins where they're in the Meeps engine room, I think.
Yeah, the context is obviously that ship that was crashed was actually being mended, and the Meep, who is actually now evil, that cute Meep, horrifically evil, killing machine. Fun reveal.
Yeah.
You'll get to that in the episode. There's a great scene with that. Trying to get away, and the Doctor and now Donna, who, for reasons unbeknownst almost to herself, is helping the Doctor as much as she can, are trying to stop the ship burning half of London.
But the actual story point where I begin to have issues with comes back to with being through this before. Donna's memory is triggered a lot easier. Why do we essentially need a passcode to unlock her memories?
Okay. I didn't actually think that would be your point. It's kind of thrown me, to be honest.
I've got multiple points here. This is one of my first.
Okay.
But do you see what I mean here?
The passcode thing, I didn't even think about, because forgive me, I have not watched Journey's End in a while, but aren't the words that the Doctor uses pretty much the words she said as she was like having the meltdown, like in that order? Because it ends with binary, binary, binary.
I think so. But why does it take those specific words to remind her? Not the alien prancing around, evil, threatening to kill them, them being locked inside the spaceship, the Doctor being there and passing her a sonic screwdriver, seeing also alien race with guns, being shot at. Why does it require a passcode to unlock her memories?
Yeah, I admit it doesn't make sense. It doesn't really make sense. It makes sense as like a moment, if you want to have a moment where like it's obvious, but you could have done that without a passcode. You could have just had Donna kind of going back.
Remember,
the only argument, I suppose, is that the activation of, you know, can I get some Dr. Donna out of you before I leave you to die?
But I feel like it would be more natural if that happened not long after she just gets in there, as kind of like the straw which broke the camel's back is him prancing around.
Yeah, I think
like
that
would
would
have
be
been better, but also not taken out of the story.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think it's kind of contrived.
Which then brings us on to the ending, which I sort of has some issues. So I actually don't mind the idea of that she's kind of lost the Time Lord energy because she's had a daughter. I actually kind of get that side of it. I feel like the binary, non-binary bit is just... It feels like to... I quite liked Rose as a character because she's a character who is trans rather than a character who has to be trans. Do you get that? Do you get that point there?
I sort of get the point. Is this sort of the argument that like because Rose says non-binary in response to Donna's binary, it would have had to mean that Rose was non-binary in order to make that point work. I think that's a problem in two ways.
That's kind of what is implied.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think the first problem is that the one you've mentioned, and I think the second problem is that in some ways, and I think this is an issue towards the end, and sometimes through the episode, I kind of notice it. A lot of bits of this episode that could have been more emotionally resonant are traded in. I hate using this phrase, but I'm gonna go with it. Are traded in for brownie points.
I don't necessarily think that is the case. Because I think all the discussions around it, like the real life discussions around it, like them discussing it, and I say with the family, with Sylvia and Donna discussing it, there's real emotional push hump there.
Oh yeah.
I liked the mention. I liked the mention of the pronouns bit just because.
Yeah.
I felt like that was a natural. It kind of fits within the Rose character to sort of like question that, which is something which I think we should be doing more of anyway.
Oh, sorry. I think I should clarify. I don't mean when I say like we're getting cheap points that sort of devalues all of the other stuff, because that's all good. I don't think this devalues that at all. I think what it is that I would have preferred the moments be rooted in something else that didn't feel like it was using those things to kind of make a plot point work. I think that's what I'm saying. That doesn't devalue anything else. I just think maybe that could have been different. I think it's the same with, obviously, after the problem's all resolved, the Doctor's like, well, how do I get the meta crisis out of you both now? And the response is, women can just sort of let that go.
What the fuck does that mean? No, this is my main point about this ending. Like, this is what I'm on about. This is what I'm on about how I feel like if you left out half of it, it would make it a better story. Like if we have you had a daughter, that's the thing which stopped you from getting all of Meta Crisis in one go.
Perfect with that.
That's a good point. And then we go to, so how do we let it go? Why didn't we just have something along the lines of, there's two of you now, so it's easier for it to dissipate? Or something like that.
That would make sense.
Like, it just feels like there's just added bits for the sake of adding bits.
It's trading it in to make a sort of like joke. It's a really odd way to explain, because what that does is explains away the issue that was effectively causing the entire central conflict of the episode itself. So if it were that easy, wouldn't it have happened 15 years ago, thereby solving the problem that we had?
Yeah, like
it kind of cheapens Journey's End a little bit.
I think that's one of the reasons why I just don't like this ending. It is just one massive Deus Ex Machina, which lessens as a story, but also, in some way, it could have been a better Deus Ex Machina by just taking out small chunks. It just feels like a lot of the episode is rushed, but then there's just random beats, like the chat with Bingham, like this binary, non-binary stuff, where we just seems to just exist.
I think a lot of this episode can be explained from the perspective of the purpose of the episode is effectively to undo the end of Journey's End. And so it's Russell trying every conceivable way to not only like undo what happened in Journey's End, but kind of wrap all of the threads from that part of Who in a bow, in like a nice way, as if it was like fully resolved. Because I think what will happen in the other two specials is now we're going to move forward from that. I think this was the episode which was, remember all of this, that was great. Next episodes will be the one where we move into whatever the new Who will look like.
Yeah, I feel like this episode was a lot of missed opportunities to some extent.
I don't think that makes it a bad episode. I still really, really enjoyed this, and I think it was great.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I loved it as well.
But I do agree with you. It could have been better. It relies on nostalgia a little. Not a bad thing, because I think nostalgia is perfectly fine to use to story, and heaven knows everyone else does it.
Yeah, there's also some other fun things which happen in the episode. Let's cheer ourselves up. We have the courtroom scene, which completely pointless, but I loved.
Someone staying at the flat I'm in is Portuguese, and they'd never watched Doctor Who before. And I was saying, I'm going to watch this and I'm going to do a podcast for it. And so they thought, I'll give it a watch. I'll try it out. And the courtroom scene threw them in a way I cannot describe. They were looking at me like they'd never seen anything like this. They're like, why does he have a wig? What's going on? And I sort of went, to be honest, I can't explain this one, but just, go with it, go with the vibe. Even by Tennant standards, that one's mad.
It was for Shadow Proclamation. He declared 15D and
no, it was canonical. He declared it.
So, which requires him to have a wig. I don't know.
Does it? you before the end of this recording please pull out the full legal text of that paragraph in the Shadow Proclamation book to see person declaring must have wig.
I'll see what I can do for you.
No, surely not. No one has. This is a complete. There is no Shadow Proclamation book. Russell's just made it up.
No, so it has come up before. Shadow Proclamation, Article 15.
No, it hasn't.
I don't. Yeah.
When did it come up?
Do you want to guess when it is?
I mean, if I'm thinking about Shadow Proclamation. Oh, is it in Rose? When
Is that your final
Eccleston
answer?
meets the Nestine consciousness, and because he mentions Shadow Proclamation there, it would make sense that Russell would make a reference to the first episode of his first run as showrunner in the first episode of his second run. That would make a lot of sense.
That is correct, and it also.
Oh my god, I'm a genius!
It also came up when. Do you remember when Rose was bullshitting in the Christmas Invasion? When speaking to Sorax, just trying to sound more.
Yeah, because that's a reference to obviously what Eccleston had said.
Yeah. So it's dealt with murder not being a rule of war. According to the wiki.
And that's consistent. Russell, that's such a ridiculous callback. It's so niche. It's unbelievable. Right. That's really, really clever. They got Article 50 in there.
They've got Article 57.
What's Article 57 of the Shadow Proclamation?
Prohibited for disruption of a fully established level 5 planet such as Earth if no hostile actions were implemented by the planet.
Partners in crime, that comes up in, I suppose.
The 11th Hour, a comic book.
Yeah.
And no
partners in crime. Because there's a line where he goes, something on a level 5 planet is against galactic law. I think it's a reference to that article, if maybe not a direct invocation of the article. How am I talking about references to a fictitious set of laws?
Shall we move on to something else to save you from this rabbit hole?
Yeah, let's.
Shall we talk about our new game show? So, James, welcome to... Is this a new feature of the Sonic Screwdriver? So it's a true or false answer, James. Make a hologram.
That must have been done before one time. No, because budget. No, this is a budget thing, surely. This is because surely those holograms are just look at me with my Disney Plus budget stuff. Yeah, okay. I'm going to say that's not happened before, so that is a new feature.
True. The ability to make force fields.
That is a fucking new feature.
This is basically just me taking the piss out of them, just randomly adding in features for no apparent reason for Sonic Screwdriver.
We often use the Sonic Alike in Russell episodes to kind of get out of some things. Like, I've always sort of thought, cool, Sonic's cool, but it is a bit of a contrivance, right?
Like, what happened to...
That's incredible.
You say... Like, RT used to say he likes the idea of Sonic Screwdriver because there's no point locking the Doctor behind a door. We just need him to just open it.
Mm.
And it's all the other showrunners who kind of just added everything onto it. Why is Russel T Davies contributing just for the adding of bullshit to the Sonic Screwdriver?
Russel T Davies has turned the Sonic Screwdriver, as far as I can work out, into the Green Lantern or something of that ilk, because he can just do anything apparently now.
It's now just the Sonic multi-tool.
I find it ironic that we've had an episode where we've introduced Sonic holograms and Sonic force fields, and yet we still have a moment where deadlocks the ship and the Sonic's like, no deadlock, please, and it stings him, and he's like, well, of course, it's a deadlock. I can't use my Sonic that can make fucking force fields now.
I think this is one of my main issues with this story, is that it just does stuff sometimes. It's just like, why?
And you kind of have to go with it.
Yeah.
And that...
So
And that's kind of back to the point I was making about budget, is once you have the money to do something, you're kind of like, oh, that would be great. And then instead of the producers going, oh, we do not have the budget for that, the producers go, yeah, sure, we got money in the bank. You use it, why not? And that changes your approach to storytelling because you've got options.
and much like what I was saying before, so much for random crap they added in for Sonic Screwdriver didn't need to be there. They didn't need the hologram. They've gotten around it before by just having a
it's all
monitor
kind of
nearby. They just zap the monitor and it comes up with a schematic. They did that in John Bishop's entry episode. I've forgotten what it was called.
we've kind of gone in on like our issues, but I think it is important to go on the praise side, because this feels like such a good way to return to Who, and Russell's Who in particular.
Yeah.
I think it's emotionally so strong. The bit where you think that Donna dies, just for a second, I know that trope is well used.
I think this is why I'm so hurt by how it actually ended. Because there was part of me when she was dying, I didn't really going, wait, I can't actually remember. Is she in the other parts? Is this actually her last part? And I was thinking, they go, no, this can't actually. Have they actually killed her off? And then we went on.
But in my head, I was thinking, we hadn't seen really Donna in the other episodes.
No.
Because, in the speculation where we were all going, oh, so all those spaceship shots, that's going to be Wild Blue Yonder, and that's what we've got of it. But that's all happened.
Yeah.
That happened just now. So we've seen all of that.
I was thinking to myself, legitimately, is this actually the end of Donna? And I was thinking, wow, this is actually like hitting me.
Yeah, I was thinking it might be.
And then,
because we hadn't seen anything to.
And then I think that is where my hatred of the ending comes in so much. It's because they actually had a really nice, satisfying ending there. Obviously, not really nice is the wrong word there.
Yeah.
It would have also worked and would have been so much more emotionally impactful than just the Deus Ex Machina crap, which overrides the impacts of 2 previous stories.
I agree with you there, but the emotion of that, which is the thing I mainly wanted to focus on. Goodness me, do you feel that in your guts? I mean, that whole scene, I know, passcode aside, plot contrivance aside, put that all away. Emotionally, that scene hit more than anything I've watched on Who for the last 14 years.
I think it's that.
I felt it.
This is something which I did want to say, which was good, is David Tennant in this. It's like when he initially thinks which Wilf is dead.
Yeah.
Like, he's just devastated.
Oh my God, that acting is incredible.
It was just like that. I think that has to be one of the saddest I've seen for Doctor. And it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Twist of
I forgot about
he's
that.
just at a care home kind of deal. Like, that was just perfect.
Yeah, he's not dead, like he's fine.
That was just a perfect bit of Russel T Davies misdirection, but really well done emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, because when you hear it, you're kind of like, initially you're like, oh, okay, well, that's how they're going to explain not being the episode. Yeah, that's fine. And then you get that emotional hit of just, I like how it's always in the subtle moments that the Russell does the Doctor character development, if we can call it character development. That kind of moment where you realise that it's very, very few people the Doctor has ever reacted like that.
Yeah, he's like going,
and that shows you of how high a regard that is held in.
Yeah, he's just sat there going, I loved that guy. It's just, honestly, I think that is potentially one of my favourite scenes of the show. It's just that moment.
Yeah, I would go with that.
It's just so understated.
I also think, again, I think the binary, non-binary thing aside, the sequence in which it's shown that the toys Rose was making were actually subconscious recreations of classic Doctor Who monsters.
Yes.
Remembered in the subconscious. Wow. That's how you explain that. That's how you make, like, a thing that seems kind of incidental, incredibly instrumental in your episode. And then you realize at that point why that character is called Rose. It's because subconsciously that's the name of the first person who absorbed that. And it's all linked back to that first series ending.
Mm-hmm.
That's brilliant.
So I think the final thing left.
There are so many moments that are brilliant.
I think the final thing left for us to discuss is the new TARDIS interior. We are going back.
Massive, isn't it?
We are going back to a non-360 TARDIS set, but it is so big.
Yes. God, it's huge, isn't it? Yeah, I know I've said budget like 10 times.
It's almost too big.
God, is this thing expensive to look at?
It's almost too big.
Yeah, it's like cavernous. It's like, why did we even need this?
I know people won't like me for this, and I know what it's going for. It's going for retro original TARDIS look, but it's too clear.
I like the console.
I love the console, but everything else just feels so clinical.
Yeah, it's sort of giving like very beautiful hospital ward.
Yeah, I'm not keen on it at the moment.
Yeah, it could be one that grows on me. I just think it's almost too big for its own good. Like I saw it and I went, "Jeez, that's just massive."
It's too big and too clinical. I'm more than happy turned around to it the more we see the space in use, but it's got a coffee machine.
I guess the last point I'll make before we rate this thing, Doctor Who might be in the position when it's suddenly got so much freedom that it might not know what to do with it yet. Because it's just an insane change.
That brings us to the end of this episode. What do you rate this episode out of 10?
A lot of this is probably nostalgia and fanboying kicking in and everything, but I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to give this an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are issues. The ending is a bit too easy. There are some parts of this that feel contrived. There are some scenes that don't work. But the bits that do work so well that you know you're in safe hands. Like, Russell has faults as a writer, and this episode has faults. But how wonderful was that to be back in the company of Tennant and Tate like that again? That's something I never thought I would see. It's something I dreamed of when I was a kid, when I lost that. And for me to watch that episode was really emotional. I admit it's not perfect, but I still loved it.
I'm probably going to give it a bit lower, a 7. I had lots of fun with it. I loved seeing the cast back again.
Fair.
But it's just that ending. It was just shoddy work, that ending. That's my one.
It is tough to look past. I agree with you.
It's the fact it doesn't just damage itself, it damages other episodes. That's the thing which gets me. But yes.
I think that whole thing is going to be a debate we're going to keep having. I think that's going to be like a real talking ending for a good while. I think long beyond these episodes being done. If you've enjoyed this episode of Into the Black Archive and reached the end, we'll be back next week to talk about Wild Blue Yonder, which is the second special of the 60th. We don't know anything about this, and the things we thought we knew, we now don't. So total mystery for us. Hopefully we enjoy it.
We'll be back next week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to tell us what you think and tell us how we're wrong, you can find us on all the social, on X/Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it now, on Black Archive Pod, on Instagram, Black Archive Pod, and you can email us, blackarchivepod@gmail.com. So I hope you subscribe if you enjoy this. We've got loads of stuff going all the way back to the beginning of Doctor Who, all those 60 years ago.
And you can go through wherever you get your podcast to find all of those old episodes and keep up with the new ones as well. We'll be back next week, and we will see you next time.
Bye.